People think innocence means nothing bad ever happened, but sometimes innocence is what the mind builds so the child survives it. My childhood had corridors I never walked down twice, doors that closed behind me before I learned their price. Voices move like weather, cold fronts through the air, but something in my thinking never let the storm stay there. Memories blurred at the edges, filed somewhere out of sight. The shadows lingered softly but never turned to night. I knew the world felt heavy, I felt the tension ring, but my mind kept quiet chambers where the darkness couldn't cling. No nightmares came to warn me, no terror broke my sleep. Just fragments in the distance my mind refused to keep. So I believed in people not because the world was kind, but because the truth was hidden in the architecture of my mind. The shadows stood behind me, the storm was somewhere near, but the rooms that held the darkness were locked beyond my fear. Naive, but carefully designed. My mind closed the door before I could see, filed away the echo of what it meant to be. If I had known the whole of it, the weight it tried to bring, I might have shattered early. So my mind hid everything. There were moments like fingerprints pressed faint against the day. Something wasn't right there, but the details slipped away. I'd feel the air grow colder, a tension in the room. Then later it was distant, like remember in a dream. People say a child will break if the darkness comes too fast, but sometimes minds are architects that quietly outlast. They build small walls of mercy inside the growing brain, compartment after compartment, to keep out certain pain. So the shadows stayed as shadows, never fully named. And I believed in people with a trust that seemed absurd, even when the silence held things never fully heard, because the storm behind the curtain never reached the part of me where the mind had built a refuge, rooms I couldn't see. Naive, but deliberately close the door, seal the seam, turn the memory into dream. If the truth arrives too strong, the child may never sing. So the mind rewrites the moment into something manageable. It wasn't stupidity, it was survival. My brain was a careful archivist, choosing what could stay, not erasing every shadow, just keeping them away. Enough to keep me walking, enough to keep belief, enough to let a fragile heart outpace the buried grief. Because if I had seen it clearly, every fracture in the frame, I might have stopped believing in the goodness of the game. So the mind held back the truth and let the child keep hope. I believed in people with a trust that looked naive, where innocence was armor. My later, the shadows would